Ghiscari is a region of southern Essos, located on the eastern coast of the Gulf of Greece, and Ghiscari Empire is the oldest civilization in the world that can back up its claims with reliable written records that provide proof that the Ghiscari Empire actually predated the Long Night, though at those times it was just making first steps towards becoming an empire. Thus, during the recovery period after the Long Night, Ghiscari Empire was gathering its strength. Its cradle is Old Gis, whose architecture was dominated by massive brick towers and pyramids built using slave labor. The legendary founder of the city, Grasdan the Great, founded the famous Ghiscari lockstep legions, consisting of 3 men with their tall shields and 3 spears, reputed to have been nearly unbeatable on the battlefield. Apparently, it was the first disciplined army in history. Having a strong professional army, Old Gis proceeded to colonize its surroundings and dominate their neighbors, enslaving them. Thus was the first empire born, with a harpy as its symbol, a fanged woman with leathery wings for arms, the legs of an eagle and the tail of scorpion, holding a thunderbolt in her claws. The Ghiscari Empire's reach through time extended to nearby Sartorius, where it conducted slaving raids and through time built several colonies. Gorosh at Wyvern Point, Zametar at the mouth of the Zamoyos, and Gorgai on the Isle of Tears. Indeed, the Ghiscari Empire was flourishing and building massive pyramids thousands of years before the rise of the Valyrian freehold, when the Valyrians were only humble shepherds. Yet these shepherds eventually brought an end to the empire. 5,000 years ago, when the Valyrians discovered and mastered dragons and began to conquer outwards, the Ghiscari Empire sought to put a halt to their expansion. The 2 great rivals fought 5 great wars. The massive Ghiscari legions marched against the Valyrians, but each time they were defeated by the Valyrian dragons. Much of the fighting took place in and around the Valyrian peninsula, and what would later become known as Slaver's Bay. The Ghiscari, of course, won some skirmishes, as there is a large ancient tapestry in the heart of the Great Pyramid in Mereen, showing the last survivors of a defeated Valyrian army passing beneath the yoke and being chained. But in the last 5th Great War, the Valyrians smashed the Ghiscari legions and used dragons to burn Gis and its pyramids to the ground. After Gis was burnt, the Valyrians sowed the fields with salt and skulls, to prevent any surviving inhabitants from returning. The Valyrians conquered the surviving Ghiscari people, as well as their outlying colonies throughout the region, including Astapor, Yunkai, and Mereen. Many of the Ghiscari were slain, and many more were enslaved and died laboring for their conquerors in 14 Flames mines in Valyria. With the empire collapsing, the original Ghiscari bloodline was nearly wiped out, along with its religion, culture, and language. Ghiscari, known as slavers from the beginning of times, became slaves themselves. For thousands of years, the Ghiscari people were ruled by the Valyrian freehold, and through time the very few Ghiscari who survived the destruction of the empire intermingled with other people who were conquered by the Valyrians and incorporated into their colonies. So the bloodline of the Ghiscari Empire actually runs very thin in modern-day Slaver's Bay. However, after the doom fell upon Valyria, the cities of Slaver's Bay were able to throw off the Valyrian shackles, reasserting their independence during the Century of Blood. Yet, the echo of the doom was felt throughout the lands of the Old Empire. Gorosh and Kozai, for example, were washed away by gigantic ocean waves during the doom. The Fraki Khalasars, not restricted by dragonlords anymore, destroyed northern Ghiscari colonies, whose ruins are now called Krasaj Has, meaning Sharp Mountains, originally Khartak, Veis Mechha, City of Horse, and Veis Efe, City of Shackles. Whatsoever, handful of aristocrats gained advance of the situation, establishing great wealth and power by ruthlessly exploiting a vast slave population, to the point that the entire geographical region became known as Slaver's Bay. They developed slave trade with the Dothraki, often buying slaves captured in their own colonies, growing rich and powerful by breeding, training, and trading slaves throughout the region. These elites began to call themselves masters, looking back into the past glories of the Old Empire as a way of reasserting their power and independence. Though the Ghiscari of old won their slaves by conquest, And these new masters purchased their own distant kin, broke their will, and resold them at the slave markets. They became so rich that even founded a new Gis on an island further south of the bay. The masters of New Gis formed iron legions in mimicry of the legions of the Old Empire, but unlike the Unsullied, these are free men, as the soldiers of the Old Empire were. After they regained their independence, the slaver cities of Astapor, Yunkai, and Mereen also began using harpies on their flags, emulating the harpy symbol of the old Ghiscari Empire with the minor differences. Even though these masters got no actual ties with the Old Empire, they still think of it as their empire, clinging to its glories. The original language of the Ghiscari Empire, now known as Old Ghiscari, went extinct as the Valyrians forced their subjects to speak Valyrian. Old Ghiscari did influence the common variant of Valyrian, which developed in Slaver's Bay, mostly in a few loanwords such as Misa, meaning mother, and a few grammatical structures. After gaining their independence, Ghiscari still kept speaking the Valyrian language. This wealthy slaver elite that has forgotten their own tongue, these old names with fat purses play mock wars at the fighting pits with their slave soldiers, pretending to be of the blood of old Gis, sitting atop their pyramids and drinking apricot wine. As a sign of high station, they wear the tokar, an impractical outfit that requires the wearer to hold it in place with one hand and walk in small steps. High-born men also wear hairs teased, oiled, and twisted into fantastic shapes, such as horns or wings. They are also fond of rich food including duck eggs, octopus stew, and even dog. It is said that Ghiscari will eat meat of any creature except man or dragon. The Ghiscari still worship the gods of old Gis, with Graces as their priestesses. The Green Grace is the topmost religious figure in the Ghiscari city. It is known that Ghiscari consider the blood spilled in the fighting pits a sacrifice most pleasing to their gods. Pity they don't fight in the pits themselves to honor their gods. They are not fond of dying, it seems. Maybe they just do not want to be buried in crypts below their own manses, below their living kin, as it is accustomed there in between those who own a manse. Bricks and blood built Astapor, and bricks and blood her people, an old rhyme says, referring to the red-bricked walls of the city and of the blood shed by the slaves who constructed them. Astapor is an old city, but not as populous as Lys, Pentos, or Karf, and is renowned mostly for the special slaves it produces, the Unsullied Eunuch slave soldiers trained from a young age in Astapor to unquestioning obedience. Unsullied begin as young male slaves chosen for their size, speed, and strength. Boys chosen are then fully castrated, with their penis and testicles cut, and their manhoods burned at the altar of the Lady of Spears, the great goddess of the Unsullied, of whom they are forbidden to speak to others. Their training starts at age 5 and is from dawn to dusk. It is brutal, designed not only to teach them how to fight, but to strip away all individuality, empathy, and self-worth. On the day a boy is cut, he is given a puppy to take care of. At the end of the first year, the boy is made to strangle the puppy. Should he fail to do so, he is killed and fed to the surviving dogs. Boys that fail any aspect of their training are killed, so only a third of them survive to become unsullied. Castration means that they cannot be as strong as whole men, but this is more than made up for by discipline. They also regularly consume an elixir called the Wine of Courage to deaden their sensitivity to pain. They drink it with every meal, and through time feel less and less pain. Every day they choose new names at random by drawing tokens from a bucket, each consisting of a color and a type of vermin, such as grave worm. To win their spiked cap, they must take a silver mark, go to the slave markets, and buy a newborn slave child, and kill it before its mother, and pay the slave's owner for his loss. Unsullied are used as guards all over the free cities, being sold by thousands. The good masters, the slavers of Astapor, used to sell Unsullied in groups of 10 for household guards, but that proved unsound since they mingle with others and forget who they are. It is well known that the Unsullied make excellent guards. Also, they do not loot and, of course, will never rape. The only vice left for the Unsullied is food. so Unsullied serving as household guards often grow fat. There is red dust everywhere in Astapor, dancing down the gutters at each gust of wind, so Astapori women veil their faces to keep the brick dust from their eyes, as it stings worse than sand. City is most beautiful at dusk, when the good masters light silk lanterns on every terrace, so all the pyramids glow with colored lights. Pleasure barges ply the warm river, playing soft music, and calling at the little islands for food and wine and other delights. The city is poorly defended, and even a modest Khalasar could take it, but none have ever tried, because of Unsullied. Yunkai, the Yellow City, is a most disreputable place, for the city's main export is bed slaves, boy whores, and wars. The men who rule it call themselves the Wise Masters. A slave in Yunkai learns the way of the 7 sighs and the 16 seats of pleasure. Eunuchs there, for obvious reasons, are made by only cutting the testicles off. Mereen is as large as Astapor and Yunkai combined. Its walls are made of many colored bricks that are higher and better maintained than those of Yunkai, studded with bastions and anchored by great defensive towers at every angle. City contains the Temple of the Graces, a huge structure topped with golden domes. It houses the priestesses of Mereen, called the Graces. They are divided into groups, each with a specific color and specialty. Mereen is renowned for trading in slaves who are used in every aspect of life, including guards, cleaners, pit fighters, and pleasure givers. Healthy young girls and boys under 10 are especially sought after as slaves to be used in brothels. Copper is plentiful in the Ghiscari hills, but the metal is not as valuable as it had been when bronze ruled the world. Cedars once grew tall along the coast, but grow no more. They were felled by the axes of the old empire, or consumed by dragonfire, when Gis warred against Valyria. Once the trees had gone, the soil baked beneath the hot sun and blew away in thick red clouds. Some think that these changes transformed Ghiscari into slavers, because, obviously, Mereen has little to offer besides slaves, so as other Ghiscari cities. No wonder grace there is earned through whoring, butchery is art, and dog is considered a delicacy. And no wonder they keep clinging to their glorious past.